Hi everyone. Unite the children with their families. God damn it! Here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Gorillaz album, The Now Now. This is the latest full-length album from the virtual band Gorillaz, which of course is masterminded by songwriter, singer, multi-instrumentalist, producer Damon Albarn, as well as animator Jamie Hewlett. And the gang is all back. It's 2D, it's Murdoch, it's Russell, it's Noodle. Another guy who's like basically Ace from the Powerpuff Girls now. I mean, why not at this point? I've never really personally been as partial to the Gorillaz lore as I have the virtual band's music, though I understand that there are a lot of fans that feel the opposite, and that's totally fine. Regardless, I was looking forward to this new album over here quite a bit, hopefully getting some redemption out of this thing, considering that it was a relatively quick follow-up to their last full-length album, last year's Humanz. Easily Gorillaz' most underwhelming release yet, overloaded with super drab tracks, distracting features, which kind of took away from Gorillaz' core sound. It basically felt like Albarn just kind of producing a bunch of quirky instrumentals for singers and artists who he really likes. Generally a kind of out-of-control album. It just seemed like Albarn was trying to make something that was larger than life, and in the process the record just kind of got away from him. And despite the kind of mixed reception this record received from fans, he still won a Brit Award off of it, so I mean, I guess there's that. So with the fact that this record was kind of billed as a change of pace from Humanz, along with the shorter, more succinct track list, as well as the much more scant feature list, I was kind of looking to this record to focus more on Gorillaz' core sound and kind of maybe get back to basics in a way. And the Now Now definitely does that to a degree. However, I'm still having a hard time actually being excited about this album now that it is right here in front of me. Because while this record is definitely a return to focus, it's hardly a return to form. Because it is yet another departure away from the futuristic and very cutting-edge blend of pop and hip-hop and electronic music and rock that Gorillaz have been known for up until this point. Instead, on the Now Now, while certainly a lot of those genres are still at play, we're getting kind of a much more bland and dreamy take on them. It's somewhat of a drab indulgence and very summery synth pop, which was kind of clear from the first batch of singles to drop from this thing, just how uniform a lot of them were in aesthetic and vibe. I had a sneaking suspicion that the rest of the record would kind of follow suit, and it pretty much does. And maybe this shift is not really a big surprise in the grander scheme of things, because a lot of Damon Albarn's recent material, whether it's been his solo stuff or the last Blur album, has been kind of moody. I was actually surprised to hear that Humanz didn't follow suit in that when it dropped, but now it seems like we're finally getting that melancholy on a delay with the Now Now. And while this record definitely keeps in the Gorillaz spirit by being quirkier than much of the more depressive material Albarn has released as of late, it's still similarly one-dimensional in its moodiness, and has a somewhat surprising West Coast aesthetic to it. It's like a day at the beach, but you're too sad to enjoy it. I mean, there are certainly a handful of highlights on this thing, like the song Magic City, which is a very Bowie-esque but kind of comatose ballad with very haunting and atmospheric synth chords, very evocative lyrics too. I get a similar vibe off of the track Kansas. It's kind of interesting how under a lot of the forlorn vocals and smooth synths and pillowy production, there's kind of a very subtle glam rock influence ticking away. I also like the closing cut quite a bit, SOUK, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a really dejected ballad that hits listeners with these sort of disco-inspired thrusts of strings at the very end. It makes for a relatively dramatic ending. Relatively meaning in respect to the rest of the album, because in the grander scheme of things, I really don't know if the song is that exciting. You know, there's just this really potent feeling of ennui that has a chokehold on the entire album, which even infects some of the grooviest songs in the track list here, like Hollywood featuring Snoop Dogg, which features this really nocturnal blend of old-school techno and synth funk. Songs that are a bit more linear and groovier and more instrumentally intensive, like ZURICH and Sorcerers, are still pretty decent. Admittedly, the song Humility has grown on me a little bit as a single since the release of the album, because I kind of see the appeal of the song a bit more in context with the whole aesthetic of the record. And that is something I will give to the album, though. It's very emotionally and sonically consistent, which is maybe its biggest selling point, because there was a moment in my initial listens where I was very much appreciating the style and the vibe of this album. But once I dove into it deeper, I was just kind of failing to find anything that backed the aesthetic of this album up, anything that made it exciting beyond the surface level mood presented to the listener. Personally, I don't really feel like there is, but you know, it's not a bad thing to have a mood album every once in a while. This is very much a mood record. Like, it's got a decent flow, it's got a strong aesthetic, some good musical highlights here and there, but overall, it's very low impact. It's kind of pleasant, it's kind of sweet, it's kind of sad. Not much else. It's nice while it's on, but I'm not sure if I would really go out of my way to listen to it again. I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Gorillaz Forever.